This video is about the ascent of intelligence. That is, how humans, through some evolutionary process, acquired the larger and more complicated brain, which sets them apart from the rest of the animal world. The acquisition of language was the turning point, the principal turning point for the evolutionary separation of humans from apes. From this flowed the ascent of human intelligence, with the ratcheting up of human mental and cultural advance as a result of interaction between individual variations in brain structure and development, and continually advancing complexity of the social, technological, and cultural environment, a manifestation of the Baldwin-effect. Both body and brain were involved in the acquisition and advance of language, phylogenetically and ontogenetically. The relation between mind state and body state was manifested not only in the patterning of emotion, the James Lange theory, but also in the selection of words, articulatory programs, to match patterns of perception, both of external objects and also innate attitudinal patterns, mental structures, which went to form both language syntax and motor syntax, as Carl Lashley had suggested long ago, following Kant. The key aspect of the motor theory of language is that words, speech and language are the outcome of an exaptation of the motor control system. That is, a direct relation between aspects of the motor cortical system and the characteristic features of lexicon and syntax. And particularly recent experimental research using fMRI and other techniques has provided material support for the motor basis of language. Later in this talk I will be mentioning some of the important recent research which throws a light perhaps on the acquisition of speech by humans in evolutionary terms and the development of language. Two topics besides this research evidence, which I will be talking about later, is EVO-DEVO, that is evolutionary developmental biology, which is an emerging science, and more particularly about the Baldwin effect, which is the suggestion made in the 19th century by Baldwin that the behavior of humans can affect the environment in which the succeeding generation will have to survive, and therefore affect the characteristics of natural selection in that period. Now, a preliminary discussion, which I will engage in, which on the motor theory of language came from the imitation of sounds, shapes and actions, which were then transduced into articulatory programs by motor equivalence. Motor equivalence has been the central process in the origin of functioning of language and the acquisition of words. Now, to present these ideas, one must consider what evidence there is. Are there examples? Is there any experiment that can be done? Now, in science, in the past, there have been thought experiments, notably, for example, by Einstein, in imagining traveling up in a lift and replicating gravity as a result of the upward movement of the lift. or there can be material experiments of the kind which led to the ultimately Clerk-Maxwell's formulation of the equations of electromagnetism. That is the work of Weber and Kohlrausch to establish the relation between magnetism and electricity, which threw up, surprisingly, a velocity equal to the velocity of light. Or there can be mind experiments. Mind experiments means thought experiments. And when we are concerned with the operations of the mind, as we are eminently in the case of language and the relation between language and the world, then what we have to resort to is mind experiments. Humboldt, an eminent predecessor in the discussion of the relation of language and intelligence, thought that there was a definite relation between words and what the words referred to, not merely an arbitrary or conventional relation. So he said, the sound, the word, is not a directly imitative sign, but indicates a quality which the sign and the object have in common. Sounds which partly independently and partly in comparison with others produce an impression which to the ear is similar to that which the object makes upon the mind.